Welcome back, brothers and sisters of Christ. My name is Brianna, and I'm back with another video. And for today's video is It's Okay to Be Alone. So I noticed that this generation has a bad fear and a bad anxiety of being lonely and being alone. And, there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be lonely. We're humans. We're made for mates. We're made to have children and different things like that. But what's wrong is that because of a lot of people's fear and anxiety for being alone and being lonely, they are literally putting up and staying in toxic situations, toxic relationships, and toxic environments because they fear of being alone and they fear being lonely. Toxic things and people that God told you to remove yourself from. Toxic things are people that God never ordained to begin with, but because you were lonely, you got tangled into some nonsense out of God's will. This goes for any and everything. Some people are staying in toxic, envious friendships because they don't want to be lonely and they don't have other friends to yet replace the toxic friends that they have. So they're remaining friends with these toxic people because if they let this friend go and they don't got no backups, they're going to be lonely. So ultimately, they're staying so they don't be lonely in these friendships. We have people staying in toxic romantic relationships because they don't have another romantic partner to replace that one. So they're staying in toxic romantic relationships in fear of being lonely. And, another thing is you don't have to have a replacement all the time before removing something or removing someone. Sometimes the right replacement won't come until you seek the Lord or until you remove the toxic thing or the toxic person. You know what I'm saying? There's people, like I said, they're not moving on from things and environments and people because they don't have a replacement. And because they don't have a replacement, they're not going to move on because they don't want to be lonely. We have people staying in toxic job environments that God has called you to leave, but because you haven't found another job, you're staying. If God tells you to leave, it's because he has you covered. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to any and everything. We got people staying in toxic church environments that God has called them from, but they're staying because they haven't found the replacement church. And some people stand just so they can say they go to church altogether. Now, I'm not saying just get up and leave some of these places. You know what I'm saying? Like your church or your job on your own timing. But I'm saying when God says leave, then you need to leave. I don't leave a place until God tells me to, and I encourage you all to do the same. Depending on the situation, obviously. Well, not depending on the situation. If God tells me to leave, but like if it's something so obvious, toxic relationships, that's God telling you to leave anyway. It's toxic. It's nothing that he even set up to begin with. But when it comes to church and jobs and different stuff like that, it takes a little more time and more things to be revealed to know that God is telling you to leave. But we have people forcing things that God has called them away from because they don't want to be lonely. We got people rushing into things and making the wrong move because they don't want to be lonely. We got people not even consulting with God to begin with, but they're just doing things on their own because they don't want to be lonely. We got people ignoring God when he's showing, they're consulting him, but they're ultimately ignoring God when he's showing them who people truly are, and to walk away from these people simply because they don't want to be lonely. We got people talking to people that they don't even like because they don't want to be lonely. We got people sleeping with people that they don't even like, don't even know, don't want to be with because they don't want to be lonely. And I know this because I literally had someone admit this to me, that they were only talking to certain people or dealing with certain individuals because they didn't want to be lonely. That's literally the words that came out of this person's mouth, that they don't want to be lonely, but they don't actually like these people that they're dealing with. And to me, no judgment, but at the same time, it sounded like crazy. I'm just like, because I don't know about nobody else, but I'd rather be lonely than deal with toxic people that are not for God and that is not from God. You know what I'm saying? Because when you walk with the Lord anyway, you're never lonely. And when you walk with God, you don't always need a replacement right away, like I mentioned earlier. The Lord is literally everything you need. He's your friend. He's your comforter. He's your peace. He's your provider. He's your warrior. He's your shepherd. He's your protector. He's your healer. He's your confidant. He's your, everything. You know what I'm saying? He's everything and more that you need in life. Every season you should be seeking the Lord, but your lonely season is the best time to seek the Lord because you literally have no distractions. You know what I'm saying? It's just you and the Lord. Use that time to talk to God and to get to know God instead of spending your time trying to hop into the next situationship. Get to know God and yourself more before you try to rush to get to know someone else. Loneliness is always looked at, as a bad thing. And it's really just seasons. But there's so many positive things that can come out of being lonely if you use your lonely time the right way. Now, I personally was never scared to leave anything and anyone out of fear of being lonely, but that's just me. You know what I'm saying? It'd be like because I love somebody, because, different stuff like that. But loneliness didn't ever cross my mind. Now, of course, I have felt lonely in different points of my life. But I didn't just, we can't just do things or settle for things because we're lonely, because that's not going to do anything but create chaos. Okay, if it's not ordained by God, it ain't gonna be good. But of course I have felt lonely in different points of my life, but I understand that my peace and my spirit and my relationship with God is more important than a season of being lonely. There has been times I felt lonely, like friendship wise, but baby, God is so present that I don't even feel lonely often anymore. Like I said, He's been opening doors in that area anyway. But I remember in the beginning, there were times I'm like, I just feel like super lonely in this area of my life. But me and the Lord, like, baby, He was so present. We were so locked in. And it's because I use my lonely time spending it with God. You know what I'm saying? And He has been the best friend you could ever ask for, baby. Having the Lord as your best friend is such a blessing. It's just such a reassuring. I don't even know how to put it into words, if we're being honest. The things that I've experienced, the things that He revealed. And, I like to think that I've experienced a lot of things since I've been on my journey. I've seen a lot of things. I had many intimate situations with the Lord. And I like to think it's because He knows that I was in like a lonely season. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was always just me and the Lord. And I feel like He was just revealing things to me because, not just because of that, but it made us closer. You know what I'm saying? It made us more close. He knew that I didn't have no one. You know what I'm saying? Like that understood me. And, He is just wonderful. I'm telling you, to have the Lord as your best friend is the best thing that you could ever do. And another thing about lonely seasons, you learn more about yourself. Okay? But also, when you seek God through these times, these lonely seasons, you have a stronger foundation and relationship with the Lord. So when it is time to find a partner or find a friend, you're not willing to put up with any old thing or any old body, because the Lord has taught you some things in your lonely season when you sat down with Him and He, you know what I'm saying? He grew you. He grew you in knowledge. He grew you in wisdom. And He showed you how you ought to treat people and how people ought to treat you. And you've been lonely before, so you'll do it again. You know what I'm saying? If you have to do it again, you'll do it again instead of settling for less. Because, baby, when you seek the Lord, He hires your standards to where they ought to be. You know what I'm saying? It makes you stronger. It makes you wiser. You have better discernment when you seek the Lord during your lonely seasons, baby. So when you come out, you're stronger than ever. Your discernment is stronger than ever. You're not putting up with the same things that you used to. Because in your lonely season, you didn't hop from person to person, friendship to friendship, just to, toxic situations just because you were lonely. But you ran to the Lord and you went to seek the Lord. And because of that, baby, when it is time to find friendships, when it is time to find a church, when it is time to find a new job, when it is time to find a new partner, baby, you know what you're looking for. You know what you're worth, because the Lord has set you down. He has talked to you, baby. You hold yourself back in your lonely seasons when you are just trying not to be lonely instead of seeking the Lord. As long as you got King Jesus, you don't need nobody else. And that saying could not have been more true. Because the thing about it is, no one is going to feel that lonely void but the Lord in that season. Trust me. You know what I'm saying? I know. Don't be scared to be lonely. It's just a season. Because it's a good thing if you're seeking the Lord in your lonely seasons. And that's what we have to understand. We have to stop looking at certain seasons as a bad thing, as a negative thing. The Lord uses everything to teach us. And like I always say, when we do things out of God's will, we we're creating unnecessary destruction and chaos. The best thing to do in your lonely seasons is seek the Lord. Every season you should be seeking the Lord. But like I said, your lonely seasons is the best, because that's when you and the Lord are like, it's just y'all two. Baby, y'all face to face. Baby, you on Mount Sinai. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the best times to spend and have with the Lord, when it's just you and him. No distractions. So, don't be scared to be lonely. Seek the Lord. Seek his face in these times, in this season. Do not just hop to the next person, the next friendship, and don't just settle for any old thing, any old toxic thing, just because you don't want to be lonely. That's unhealthy. It's not good for your peace. It's not good for your spirit. It's not in God's will if it's toxic. Stay aligned to the word of God. Stay aligned to God and his will for your life. Seek the Lord. Seek his face. Seek his plans for you. Get to know him. Get to know yourself. A lot of people are so worried about relationships and friendships, they don't even know who they are. They don't even know who the Lord is. People are willing to get to know friends and men and women more than they are willing to get to know the Lord and themselves. People sit down with people and can't even tell them about who they are, because they haven't even got to know themselves, but they're so busy trying to get to know other people. And getting into these toxic situations that God has never ordained. So, seek the Lord. Just seek the Lord, and it is okay to be in seasons of loneliness, in quietness, in peace. But if this word is not for you, this is for somebody else. Remember, I'm telling y'all this because I love y'all. God bless.